Okay, so let's talk about anecdotal evidence here. Let's get started. You're probably wondering what it is. So instead of giving you a definition, which is kind of boring, I'm going to tell you a story about anecdotal evidence. So here's me. Here's my dad, and this is when I was 7. So when I was 7, I was asking my dad, "Hey, I want a dog. Can you get one?" And he said no, and so I was like, "Well, why doesn't he want me to get a dog?" And it turns out that when my dad was saying that, he had this like dog back when he was a little kid, and it got run over by a car. So in his mind, what he was thinking is, had a dog, got hit by a car. Dogs always get hit by cars. And it didn't really matter how many times I told him, how awesome a dog was or how cool they were. In his mind, he had this one thing based on this one time, this one experience, that he had a dog, got hit by a car. Dogs always get hit by a car. That was a logical conclusion that he had formed in his mind, even though it doesn't really make sense to him. And it doesn't really make sense if you look at the data of, happiness versus fluffy boys, for example. Now, he always told me that there were a bunch of other reasons why I couldn't have a dog. Anyways, here are the two things that I've learned from this. Thing number one is I have unresolved issues from my childhood, as does all. And then the next thing I learned is that stories tend to be more convincing than peer-reviewed data. Let me say that again. More convincing. Now, clearly, peer-reviewed data is better in terms of like forming a conclusion, right? We would rather take something that a scientist has researched versus a story that we heard one time. However, it doesn't matter how hard these scientists try. Scientists have actually researched this, and they've found that people are more likely to believe a story than they are to believe a fact that they can show and prove to them. And it has to do with this thing called anecdotal evidence. Anecdotal evidence anecdotal evidence is, I should say, information collected informally from stories of others. These stories could be true. These stories could be, made up. These stories could be myths, somewhere in between, right? So it's not really evidence, even though we label it as anecdotal evidence. Anecdote means story, evidence means fact, but it's not really a fact. It's just a fact that people have drawn from stories. So here are a couple of things that we have. A couple of statements. And what I want you guys to do is determine which one of these are anecdotal evidence. This one right here. A park ranger told me that wolf saliva is a better antiseptic than Neosporin. That's anecdotal evidence because the person telling you this is getting that information from someone else. They could be telling the truth. They could be lying. I've lied to people before. I do it all the time. You know what I'm saying? Right? I might not necessarily say something that is true, even if I cite a reputable source. If I were to say something like, check out this article on the new space shuttle, that's okay. That's a fact. But I heard on Twitter that Anthony Davis is getting traded. While it might be true, who's to say what Anthony Davis is up to in his offseason? We know that it's anecdotal evidence because it's, again, secondhand information. We're getting it from Twitter, which could maybe not necessarily be an accurate source, and we're hearing it from a person. So in the first case, the park ranger, reputable source, they know their things about wolves, right? But you're hearing it not from the park ranger himself, but from a person who heard a park ranger. Secondhand information, right? If I were to tell you that atoms are made of protons, neutrons, and electrons, listen, I'm a chemistry expert. So if I tell you something about chemistry, it's true, right? I'm not going to lie to you about chemistry. Now, if Dwight Schrute, character from The Office, says bears eat beets, that's actually a false statement. Bears do not eat beets. Hold on one sec. Let me just go ahead and check this. I'm sorry. I should have done this earlier. Let's see here. Do bears eat beets? Do bears eat beets? I think the answer is no. Oh, well, there you go. According to Answers.com, which might not be a reputable source, bears actually do eat beets. So even though it's true, it's not necessarily, correct information, or it's not it's not actually from a reputable source. So this meme kind of sums up what I'm saying. Empirical means evidence that's proved through like research and stuff. Moving on. So here's the deal. The reason why we're talking about this is because we live in the year 2020 where everything is kind of nuts. Everything is way different than it's been in previous years. And I think that misinformation has been at a recent high, right? I'm not saying that it's at an all-time high, even though I think it is, but I think it's been at a recent high at this point in time. So my job as a teacher, nay, a scientific educator, is to teach you how can you tell when something is information or when something needs to be fact-checked. That's the goal. Would you like to do that? I hope you would. Let's get after it. Okay, so here's another meme for you. They're the same part of the brain, right? So it turns out that we make decisions in tandem with our emotional parts of our brain. It's in the same part of the brain. They look at people who have trauma in the prefrontal cortex, and they found that not only do they lack the ability to express emotion, but they also lack the ability to make simple decisions. So scientists have come to conclusions saying that, hey, these two things are totally related. And we also see that if we put people in stressful emotional scenarios, they will have a hard time making rational decisions. So it's come to our conclusion that people can't make the best decisions, or their decisions get affected based on their emotional state. So if someone's angry, they're less likely to do something nice, to make a nice decision, for example, is kind of what the research has shown, more or less. Okay, let's just take a break right now and go ahead and read these 3 Taylor Swift quotes. I know you might be getting a little bit overwhelmed with all this scientific-y stuff. So here are 3 inspirational Taylor Swift quotes for you. For those of you like me who Taylor Swift is your girl, you might have noticed right away these quotes are not from Taylor Swift, and they're not. They're actually from famous dictators from the 1940s. So I guess really what I'm trying to say here is memes are not a substitute for peer-reviewed research. Think about the facts in your newsfeed. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys here today, right? It looked convincing seeing all these things, but it turns out that you got, Mussolini over here, Hitler over here, and Stalin over here. So just an overall great time, right? I think actually this one might have been Hitler too. I don't know. Anyway, famous dictators from the 1940s. All of these 3 quotes are kind of fun. Here are some examples of different articles that have gotten flack because they were like, oh, hey, this is a meme. This meme is not actually true. And so if you go to www.factcheck.org, there's a bunch of different ways that they fact check these memes that have come up. And it's about a whole lot of different topics. So yeah, lasers don't cause wildfires, turns out. That's just a Photoshop picture. Here are 2 great places that I think are great places to get news. These are both considered very highly factual. If you do go to a website that like actually looks at these news sources, they'll say that both of them lean slightly left. I found a hard time finding something that is both neutral in terms of no lean either towards the Democrats or towards the Republicans, towards the left, towards the right, and also highly factual. Those are kind of hard to find. The only thing that would qualify is C-SPAN, but that's just like a camera looking at the government is what C-SPAN is. It's just like a camera where they record like things. So it's harder to digest that news. These are 2 news sources that are very, very highly factual. Very rarely will you see them have any issues. BBC is the Brits, so it's the Brits reporting on the US, so they don't really have a stake in what happens in the US to a certain degree. And AP is a bunch of different news networks all working together. So it tends to be very accurate because they research everything and they all work together. And any biases that one news network might have kind of gets washed out because they're all working together. So those would be 2 great places I would think to get US news from. Here's why reliable news matters, is that if you are watching an unreliable news source and you have to always think about what is being reported and is that accurate, have to fact check everything someone says, that's not something that you're going to do. And we see that all the time with people's news feeds. They call those echo chambers, where people who lean left will get left information. People who lean to the right will get right information. And so they'll just keep getting that information to revalidate the opinions they already have. And they'll end up from being someone who's kind of in the middle on the left side to becoming more and more and more and more on the left, or someone who leans a little bit to the right, becoming more and more and more conservative, for example. So if you have reliable news, you'll be able to not have to think critically about, are all these facts facts? You won't have to check, are all these facts facts? You'll just know that it's facts. And then you'll have a better base to form opinions and stuff. So that's what I want for you guys, is just the easiest, best way that you can form your opinions based on facts, because that helps science, right? So let's relate it back to coronavirus here, right? You hear phrases all the time on the radio that say things like, product works to kill germs. This product helps boost your immune system. This product works on viruses similar to COVID-19. This product works on other strains of the coronavirus. All of these phrases are misleading, right? If a product kills germs, that does not mean it'll keep you from getting COVID-19. If a product works on viruses similar to the coronavirus or viruses similar to COVID-19, that doesn't mean it'll stop COVID-19. Or this product helps boost your immune system is especially wrong, because your immune system can't be boosted, right? If you boosted your immune system, that means you'd have more white blood cells, which is something we see in like cancer patients. They have like 100 times the normal level of white blood cells, specifically lymphoma, which is blood cancer. Also, boosted immune systems are what contribute to autoimmune disease. So a boosted immune system isn't really a thing. You just have like a healthy immune system, which is an immune system that's not currently fighting disease, right? So all these statements are misleading, and these are all things that different companies have tried to say about their products. Some have been successful in escaping like any sort of ban from the FDA, which is the people who regulate like products and stuff. So germs, other coronaviruses, viruses similar to COVID-19, totally different than COVID-19, and don't really affect like your ability to prevent you from getting COVID-19. So what we see here is, here's the CDC, here's all these different things that people have said cause COVID-19 or help prevent COVID-19. And then here are some examples here of some people who have created these false remedies that they say, oh, for example, silver helps keep you from getting COVID-19, or maybe it's probiotics can help you prevent COVID-19, maybe it's ozone. All of these have been listed as fraudulent claims. So the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, made a list of all these people and kind of what they did and how they got them to stop doing this stuff. Some people have been apologetic, being like, "Ooh, sorry." Others have been like, no, I'm not going to listen to the FDA. And then they got like lawsuits and stuff. So, with all that said about anecdotal evidence, please don't believe stories. With all that said about reliable news sources, please check out things like AP News, or at least think, is the source that I get news from, is that reliable? Is it mostly memes? Is it an actual website? How does that website rank? If you look at what other people think about that website, you'll get some information that way as well. And then I wanted to leave you with the CDC actually made some memes in response to this, which I think is funny because they're not memes, but they just kind of show you what are facts or myths about COVID-19. So this is how I'll leave you today. I hope you learned something, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks so much. Take care.